guys, and welcome to a new layout and new video for me. This is going to be the first layout of my A to Z layout series here on my YouTube channel for 2025. And as you can see, my spinner is not working quite well, but we're going to move on. It landed on F, and my prompt for F is floss. Basically, that is any kind of thread that you have. I think about like embroidery floss, that kind of thickness as far as strings or thread is concerned. Of course, you can go thicker or thinner if you would like, but that's just my thought. I could use plain floss, I could use embroidery, or even twine would work. I'm deciding to use some kind of fibrous floss that I've had in my stash for a very long time, and I have multiple colors of, and you will see me using that later. But for now, what I'm doing is I'm pulling out some papers from my scrap stash. This is how I store my stash or my scrap pattern paper, and I store them by color. What I was thinking of, see, I've done a few things when it comes to floss. One of the things that I've done a few times and I've really liked was to cover chipboard letters, raw chipboard letters with baker's twine, and I love it because it adds immediate color to the twine, to the chipboard, but at the same time it gives it a really chunky texture. So I've done that a couple of times and I didn't want to do that. Of course, you can use embroidery floss for hand stitching. That has been very popular lately, and I like that look of that as well, but I'm gonna do something different. Remember those boards where you can use for pictures wherein it's just a board, but it has the ribbon crisscrossing over the fabric. And so that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to create a background using some paper, and I'm thinking I'm going to do some kind of a patchwork kind of pattern, and then I'm going to have some twine going on over that, on top of that, and that's what's going to quote unquote hold my photos, where that's what's gonna look like. I'm also, of course, going to adhere my photos so it doesn't come off, but basically that's what I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to start off by cutting some papers, and I've decided to make them 2-inch. And then I did have that background piece. It's the back side of a pattern paper that I don't care for. There's been a few times where I have purchased these packs of clearance pattern papers at Hobby Lobby, and so it will have like 5 to 6 pieces of a paper, and I know that's not very wise because you don't really see what you're getting, and you're getting multiples of things that you might not like, but sometimes I just like not knowing what I'm getting, and it's just like the thrill of it all. But this was one of them. It was a picture, I want to say a yak or maybe a buffalo, but of course I don't really need that big of a piece, so I am using the back side of it as kind of my pattern paper, or no, not pattern paper, but cardstock kind of piece. And because I'm going to cover the whole thing anyways, I don't really care about seeing the barcode or the label of that paper. And I guess I could have done it also on this part where the image is, but I just really like to work with a plain white canvas when I am doing things like this. So again, like I said, my goal here is to build a patchwork, and that's why I just decided to pull out papers from my scraps versus making or cutting into newer pieces. It just made sense to me that way. But if you're replicating this and you feel like there's a certain color scheme that you want to do, or a certain pattern paper collection that you want to use, and you have to cut into it, by all means, do what makes you feel good. So now that I've done my background piece, I am going to work on adding this to my background cardstock, which is a gray cardstock. And then I'm also thinking that now I need something to hold the the floss on. So I'm going to think about ways for me to add the floss. And the way I thought about doing that is that I can do that with some brads. And then now my mind started going into, well, where can the brads go? And so I thought, well, it can go on that 1 inch top and bottom of my page. But before I adhere all of that, I want to first see where my photos are going to lay. These two photos are just a couple of photos that I took of my family trying out this really tiny car that we found at the mall in California. We were there for a summer trip, and my mom had wanted or needed to go to the mall, and so we drove her there. And since we were already there, we were thinking of just kind of walking around. And so these pictures were one of those ones where you get to try out driving a car, test driving, or not test driving, but just sitting in a car. And it was really tiny cars. So that's what I'm documenting here. Like I said, the first thing that I needed to think about after I created my background was where my brads are going to be. And I had this long piece of star border that I've cut out of my silhouette machine. And so I added 2 of those. And then I had placed small brown brads in the middle of all of those stars. And I think each border had at least 10 stars, and so therefore I had 20 brads, about 20 brads. I think there were more than that of these little ones here. And this is making me really happy because not only am I going to be using floss, but I'm also using some brads that I don't normally use anymore. And so I'm happy that I'm able to kind of, hit 2 birds with 1 stone when it comes to this layout. Now, like I said, the floss that I'm using are these kind of fibery floss. I don't know how else to describe them, but that's what I'm going to be using. And the technique that I'm going to be using, again, is to just make it go around these brads. So the brads are going to be the one holding the fiber, and it's just going to go up and down, and it's going to go across on top of that pattern paper. Initially, I thought that I was going to do red because then it matches the red on my layout. But when I put it on my paper or on top of that pattern paper block that I created, it was in my view, it was going against the color scheme that I already had. And so I figured I'm going to do a neutral one, and I went with black here. And fun fact, or what makes me really happy about this layout, is I actually use up this whole roll of the thread, and that makes me really happy because one of the reasons why I'm doing the A to Z is not only to use up my stash to, see if I still love it, but at the same time, when I'm using it up, it frees up some room in my very tiny scrap space to invite or to welcome in new products. I am not in the season of accumulating products anymore because I have been scrapbooking for over 20 years and I have amassed a lot of supplies. But at the same time, once in a while, I still see some things that I would like to purchase. And in my mind, I can't really purchase anything if I don't have room for it. And because then otherwise I am just creating clutter in my stash and there's no intention to it. So what I've decided is that, first things in and, old things out and then new things in. That's kind of what I am thinking about with this challenge. So as you can see, I missed one of the brads. And so because I just twirled the brad around or twirled the ribbon around the brad, I decided to undo what I was doing and then fix it so it will work out the way I'd want it. And like I said, I'm going to use up this whole roll of fiber. So I'm going to try to test out my photos first, the placement of it where I want it. And then I'm noticing that if I were to wrap around the brad again, going back to the left side, it will be too too much. There'd be too many strings, and I don't like that. It looks cluttered. So what I ended up is just going with this style, but then I also noticed that the right side had that one straight line on the edge, and then I'm going to do that on the left side also to complete that look and to make it symmetrical. And with this part, I will be using up the whole of the fibers or the roll. So that makes me really happy. And so the only thing left that I have here, because I have matted my photos, I have created my title block and my journaling, and the last thing, of course, is to decorate. And so I found a few things in my stash, again, just random things, arrows and some acetate words and shapes, and I'm just going to add that to 3 parts of my layout and call it good. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. If you want to participate in this A to Z, make sure you check the blog post that I have, because it will have a list of the items that I am working on for this particular challenge. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye now.